I suddenly have this moment where I like go to the ground and I'm just crying going, I guess I'm better. And there's something about contending for other people's breakthrough. Like if you're dealing with trauma or you're needing breakthrough in something, I mean, I've seen this with healing, people that have back issues and why hasn't God healed me? And I'm like, well, when's the last time you prayed for someone else's back issue? We shame vulnerability when we should be championing it, saying that is a place of strength. To say I need help is actually a place of strength. I mean, I think hitting the whole biblical side to this is that I think we have a lot of people that are in the whole where David was in Ziklag and he came back with his mighty men on a war campaign and found out their wives and children were kidnapped, their houses were burning, their cattle and all their possessions stolen. And 1/3 of his mighty men, 200 out of the 600 said, we can't go on, like we are tapped out. And they rested by the river where 400 of them went back into the enemy's territory and got what the enemy had stolen. And they said, why are we going to give to these guys? These guys just rested by the river. And David made it a law, made it a decree that everyone gets back what the enemy has stolen. That there's an invitation for wholeness, an invitation for an upgrade, that it's an education on wish upon no one, but I feel like my empathy levels have gone up like crazy. And then my capacity for peace, understanding like there's such a pillar of peace that I have in my life.
Why do we have such a shame complex surrounding that type of process? And then how did you do it? What was that like for you?
I think that we go into the holiness movement, which birthed Azusa Street and Assemblies of God, and you got Foursquare and all that stuff. So you have this man of God deal, right? So you put the minister on a pedestal.
This is an era of spectacular progress, particularly in bringing the good things of life to more and more people.
And from their talks was forged a map for the path to freedom, a compact for the future, A map for the path to freedom.
Word of the day, Sesame Street. All right, boys and girls.
Dude, I've been thinking about that a lot in the sense of work life.
Yeah.
Because stepping out of full-time ministry and into full-time construction, you're still in ministry. You're never not in ministry. And I even want to start changing that language. You know what I mean? Because I don't like it. It's weird. I've been in full-time ministry for 25 years. And that's fantastic, that people serve and work in the church.
Yes.
But, I mean, the second you're born again, you're in full-time ministry just as much as T.D. Jakes has been in full-time ministry ever since ever.
Yes.
And I feel like I've been ruminating in my spirit on Paul's apron, bro, and how they would take in Acts, they would take his sweaty rags from tent making. It's not his they didn't take his preaching notes or his Bible or his whatever. They took his gross, dirty work apron, and that was anointed.
That's pretty amazing.
You know what I mean?
People getting healed.
Yeah.
Well, and then I think it was pretty epic for him to have to do that in the ways of tent making. Where he could have been. Who else would have been the most qualified to say the church should take care of me? He's like, no, I'm gonna make tents.
Yeah.
And there's something about being dependent on God, but also, I think it's great when people are dependent on the church and they're getting paid. And I lived in that world a lot, but you can cross over, and I think it's way more about the heart and how you're functioning in that place, because it can bring this dependency that's very unhealthy. And it becomes very pauper mindset. So kind of growing up in the church, growing up in the church and my parents being pastors, and somebody, gave them an RV or whatever, or someone, so you were just always dependent on the gifts, and it's almost like people can hang that over you. Hey, we're the ones that pay your salary, we're the ones, and so it causes this weird
leverage thing,
codependency thing. And it's just nice for people to not get in that vicious cycle and to be able to make wealth in other ways that frees them up so they don't have to, I mean, it's going to help them. They're going to have to find other ways to kill it.
Yeah.
But that fear of man, all that stuff.
Yeah.
It's just an intriguing deal. I've seen a lot of people get beaten down from that whole deal, or just start carrying that like very pauper,
Totally.
you know, sacrifice, all that stuff.
Wow.
But yeah, let's do it.
Let's do it. All right, dude. Tell me you'll catch the wave.
All right.
Give me an update.
Update on Catch the Wave. Okay, Catch the Wave is a ministry that was birthed out of a dream, 2016.
That you had.
I was stand-up paddleboarding Big Sur. These two healing angels come down with paddles, start stirring the waters around me, and I started breathing in
Hold on,
air.
2 healing angels with paddle boards, bro.
With paddles.
With paddles.
Not with paddle boards, just with the paddles.
Okay.
And they started stirring, they put the paddles in the water.
Oh, wow.
And I started spinning it on my paddleboard.
Okay.
I'm spinning, and then suddenly the air, like oxygen, turned in, like the particles of oxygen turned into healing. And I was breathing in healing, which I didn't realize was so significant, that I was first breathing in healing, and then this cloud of healing forms and then goes over California, over the United States, and then over the world. And I hear the Father say, like audible voice of God, it's time for you to come out of the closet and tell people you're an intercessor. And so it's this real invitation to, because I've always been an intercessor, but like kind of my being in ministry since 2000, missionary in 2002 to Indonesia, went to school ministry afterwards, ran around with Heidi Baker a lot, and various other people, Benny Hinn. So healing, evangelism was like a big forefront of my ministry, especially with my mom and dad being evangelists. And then healing, evangelism, and the prophetic. Me running around with Sean Bowles and Joe Austin, you know, we had moved in the prophetic a lot. But intercession wasn't necessarily like the forefront, but I always knew I was an intercessor. I always had a great prayer life, and prayer is just, you know, a conversation and connection with God, which I loved having. And, but I feel like God was really wooing me of like, I want you to awaken. I want you to begin to articulate what does prayer intercession look like to you, and then being able to awaken your generation, your age group. What is prayer? So we've been doing these WOW services, worship on water, where we go out with like really bad guitars and we paddle out past the waves and we just worship. And God's been talking to me about how can you be a city on a hill that can't be hidden? How can you do good deeds before men so it may glorify your Father? So we do we usually cook around 200 hot dogs and just feed people and say, would you like free hot dog and free prayer?
Where do you do this?
Oh, in like Huntington Beach, in Dana Point, at Stohini Beach, San Clemente, done it at Venice, I've done it in Santa Cruz. We're going, in a couple months, we're going to go down the whole coast from like Santa Cruz all the way to San Diego, in every county, do an outreach and a prayer meeting. So we also do these prayer meetings.
I'm coming.
You should, yeah, it would be amazing.
I want to come so bad.
We do one of these prayer meetings, we do beach cleanups.
Yes.
So I was stand-up paddleboarding in 2017 in Laguna Beach, and I was seeing all this plastic in the ocean, and the Lord's like, hey, you need to pick this up, and that this is a form of intercession. That you know, we're called to rule and subdue the earth. We're called to steward this land. And being a surfer, living in the ocean, I've seen, you know, in the 80s being in the water, 90s being in the water, seeing the deterioration, just rather that be, it's not the hot topic of climate change. It's just the fact that we have storms in the winter and we have these rivers that flow into the ocean, and it's getting more and more polluted. As a surfer, that I see all this trash, and it's like, and on the beaches, I mean, after a storm, it's really, really bad in California. But I mean, you know, the plastic issue in the world and in the ocean is a really big deal. There's 2 islands the sizes of Texas in Indonesia, Thailand, 2 different islands the sizes of Texas full of plastic. It's not land. It is plastic, and it is crazy. So anyways.
Just because of the currents, the
Yeah,
water brings
China,
it all together.
China
and
will
it
be
just-
one of your big contributors for this. We're also a pretty big contributor. Sure. But yeah, the currents in the Pacific are bringing where they will just collect in this like conversion spot. And I would love to do a prayer meeting there. That would be pretty epic to do a prayer meeting.
Wow.
And so I really feel like that there's many arrows. And if you actually look at like our generation, you see social justice, like, because I mean, God wants, one of the first things he told me in 2015 was, for the year, was I want you to learn more language of heaven and how to articulate it to a generation that's never heard the gospel in their language. And so if we can begin to identify what are the assignments of our generation, of millennials, and you look at the different trends where you vote with your feet and your money, where if you look at the universities, social justice classes started spilling out of like, you know, where new social justice departments, new social justice degrees in like the mid 2000s into 2010s begin to explode. So there is a real heart for our generation for social justice.
Yeah.
So to begin to rebrand prayer, where we're not just in a building praying, which I love praying in a building,
100%.
but there is something about getting outdoors, something about picking up garbage that will connect to a generation. Definitely. And it's just what God's like kind of leading me into. I feel like I've kind of Forrest Gumped my way into it. But one of my big things that I'm trying to do is I'm trying to talk to a couple of headphone companies where they would donate about 100 headphones. Because if you I've been kind of going into like the whole music festival scene, praying, interceding there. And you see these silent dance parties, these like, you know, 100 people with headphones, and you see them in LA, you'll see them, and it's really cool because they have no noise, you know, like they're noise compliant, it's not loud. So what if we were, I mean, if you study intercession, you study prayer, one of the big arrows that I don't feel like has been utilized is dance.
Wow.
And one of the things that you see with our generation, a sound that we are responding to is EDM.
Definitely.
You know, that is definitely a sound like you would have with the baby boomers with rock and roll and Woodstock and Jimi Hendrix playing the Star Spangled Banner. That was such a aha moment for the baby boomers.
Woodstock.
This is our Woodstock. I mean, you know, and there is, we could get more into this, but I think dance, I mean, God dances over us. He spins and twirls, you see in Psalms, and dances with joy, all this stuff. David dancing, you know, in his underwear. But I mean, it was this place of just, you know, and you know, we dance, the dancers who dance upon injustice. So what if we were to, I want to change the game of how we do beach cleanups, but also how we do prayer meetings. What if we did dance party beach cleanups? You know what I mean? On the beach, 100 people dancing, picking up garbage, and people are like, what the heck are you guys doing? It looks like you're having so much fun. Oh yeah, like you should check out God. He is ridiculously fun, you know, and social justice is really fun. It's not the dreary, you know, or it feels like some people that, and this is definitely a label and a big deal, but sometimes it's like you have to be pissed off to be social justice. You're so mad at a party, or you're so mad at what are these people doing, or, you know, these people are, you know, abusing the ocean and all that stuff. And they're like, they're upset. It's like, no, like, let's have joy.
Well, that's definitely how the world does justice, right?
Yes.
Is it's blacklist, accuse, and destroy someone's identity when they do something wrong.
Yeah.
And
shame them.
Shame them. And God's injustice is redemptive, right? Like it's a door into recovery and hope and joy.
Yes.
So that's a huge deal.
Yeah.
For people to see that.
I think it would be epic to do social justice, like dance party, beach cleanups, but then we could take these headphones and go to Azusa Street where it's a parking lot. And we go and redig the wells of revival, and we say, this is a prayer meeting for 1 hour. Come meet us at 8 p.m. And we're gonna do a silent dance party intercession, redig the wells of Azusa Street revival.
Yes.
And that would be amazing. I think that would be an epic prayer meeting.
Totally.
So I think it's gonna be really fun. So so let's catch the wave.
Okay.
Where it's really about, we were talking a little bit before the podcast about how God is just breaking compartmentalization. Like he's releasing a spirit of unity. And I had gotten so many prophetic words as a kid in my 20s about you're called to unity, spirit of unity. This whole encounter about Ephesians 2:20 through 22 with Bob Jones and this whole deal. And I always thought it was the breaking of denominationalism, but I realized that's only one arrow of like bringing unity. Okay. That whole unity deal is breaking compartmentalization. That to be unified in my spirit, soul, and body, to be connected to my spirit, soul, and body, to be connected vertically. And I think we're learning this is another one about compartmentalization that we didn't talk about before, is the whole deal of you have sometimes these people are like, oh, it's just me and God. It's just me and God. Your community might be blowing up, but it's like, no, me and God are fine. Like you can't say that you love God and hate your brother. I think we're starting to understand how connected our vertical relationship is to our community around us. That we can't compartmentalize that when you find your community, when you find brothers and sisters, when you begin to love them and break off offense, you'll have a greater capacity to love God and vice versa. God wrecks you vertically, and then that's going to affect you horizontally. Wow. And so I think we're starting to understand that, and then the big one is spirit, soul, and body, which you have with 300 AD, the Roman Empire was like, we can't keep persecuting these Christians and all that stuff. Let's just make our national faith, our national religion in the Roman Empire is going to be Christianity. And so the organized church was brought in, and you had Constantine that did a lot of talk about dualism, did a lot of talk about when we're a new creation, our spirit is redeemed, our spirit is in the new creation, but our soul will always be this battlefield, will always be this war, very Romans 6. Constantine would talk a lot about Romans 6 of, I do the things that I don't want to do, I don't do the things I do want to do, but never gets into this revelation of Romans 8, of the spirit of adoption and becoming a son, a daughter, but staying in this Romans 6 place. But then the church really hit the whole narrative for over 1,000 years that your physical body is horrible. Like it's just rotting away. It's you can't wait to get rid of this thing and have your heavenly body, and that very much, save me, deliver me, rescue me, but not understanding that our spirit, soul, and body become a new creation.
It's one.
Yeah, it's one.
It's not compartmentalized.
It's not compartmentalized.
Totally.
And I think, we're having like science, we're having other outside of the church, which we in the church should be leading this whole movement.
Totally.
Because we have such a great place of the spirit.
Yeah.
But I think we're so far behind in the whole soul emotions realm, because it's just, you can't talk about your emotions, especially in the church. You can't talk about, it's just, whether that could be a little bit of like the word of faith, where there's great things with the word of faith, but it's very much, you cannot, to share that you're weak, you're not doing well, that you need help is like, oh man, something's wrong with you. You must have sin in your life. You must have, so it's like, you just don't say anything, which is a little bit connected to baby boomers. We crawl in, we don't, call in. My grandfather dealt with some depression, and when he opened up his mouth, they took him into mental institution. They did shock therapy, electric shock therapy. That was pretty normal. They didn't have SR1s. They didn't have, a number of, different things. But anyways, we're getting into some bigger deals. But it is so, you have books like The Body Keeps the Score, The Emotional Code, stuff with Brené Brown, where we're starting to understand the science about how our soul, our emotions are so connected to our physical body. And that's what science is blowing up. They haven't even really brought up the whole spirit side and how your spirit is leading. And if your spirit and your soul and your, because it says in Hebrews 5 that your physical body is made to discern the presence of God. And so when you begin to be connected where your spirit is leading, you will actually in your physical body begin to sense God's presence, this whole deal. And that becomes, so I think awareness is a big one, is becoming aware in your physical body, becoming aware in your emotional state, that, and then becoming aware in your spirit.
Wow.
But anyways, yeah, it's good times.
Man, tell me a little bit more about how you've done that. How have you brought spirit, soul, body together?
Yeah, I think I emphasized and really took a lot of like my spirit, like in the sense of I invested a lot of time becoming aware spiritually and becoming spiritually, my spiritual acumen, growing to a level of, that's why, my whole world was the church. I was a pastor, all that stuff. So you dove into that whole place. And I think it's intriguing because there's different seasons. There's different seasons that I feel like he has me become more aware in my physical body. Like I've gone through seasons where I feel cool wind on the back of my neck, and I know that means there's a healing presence in the room. But when I first started out, like this was like in 2003 to 2005, I'd be praying for people for healing, and I'd be like, man, did someone like leave the air conditioner on, or like, what's that draft? And then I started connecting the dots. And I think that's the deal: is you have to R&D. You have to get your hands dirty, per se. You have to get out of the boat. You have to put yourself in the middle of it, and then you start connecting the dots and starting to figure out. You can't figure it out and then go and do action. You have to do action and then begin to connect the dots and catch up.
Okay.
But it's interesting how the different seasons you have, and I went through October 2014 to October 2018, and where I went through a lot of trauma, and that was an education. I think one of the big ones that to go back to your question is how to become a student of life where you're constantly learning, and so you understand. First of all, you never graduate, that everything is an opportunity, whether it be a trauma, whether that be that to understand how God's kingdom works, that when I get offended, when I go through a trauma, that I can understand that that's an invitation from heaven. Never reduce impartation to the laying on of hands. I love laying on of hands, but there's so many ways that God brings impartation into our life that brings me closer to Him. Becomes then, if I embrace that and be present in that experience, I will be even more aware spiritually, emotionally, and physically. And so, I really went through some crazy trauma, and I think I got to build a deeper well, and I really went after peace, really went after hope, really went after trust, to a whole nother level, trusting God.
Totally. You stepped away from ministry entirely, right? As you had known it.
Yeah, and I think too, that's a great thing. You brought up the ministry deal, and we were talking a bit about this, about the whole breaking compartmentalization of, you have these pastors that are paid staff and they're doing ministry, and then there's the person who's a doctor or mechanic, and there is this tension of, I would probably be way closer to God if I was in ministry, or I'll let those guys are the more spiritual guys, so it dismisses, it brings that default. And I think God is breaking this whole deal of, we're all in ministry, and that's been so cliche for the last 20 years. I feel like it's becoming another level of a reality. And I think with also our age group of those that are in their mid-30s into their upper 30s, like that it's all about identity, right? And so I think that God is always solidifying and going deeper into our identity. And I think trust is so connected to our identity.
Definitely.
Where I was in a horrible car accident in 2018 in October, and I
shared last time on the podcast.
Yeah, totally.
Which people could go back and listen to the details of the miraculous nature of that
I was ejected through the sunroof. I felt the fingers and hand of God go over my body. And then when I was knocked out, I had an encounter with one of my healing angels, and he smiled at me, and then I came back to consciousness. I have scars on my back from bouncing off Highway 5. Like, I was ejected from the sunroof, bounced, on the asphalt. It was pretty crazy. I should have died. But really, like, my car accident was, I went through 4 years of just, we went through miscarriage. A lady stole money from us. we had like 5 different deaths. I went through 3 surgeries. Like it was a really, really hard season.
Yeah.
And miscarriage was really, really hard, but my car accident was the entry point for my breakthrough.
Whoa.
And it really, when you almost die and then you come back, especially when you got small kids and the whole deal. And it's intriguing that I had kids throughout this experience, through this like 5 years. Brielle was born in December 2014. And what's crazy is I had these crazy God encounters in the midst of this trauma, but I still had the trauma. And trauma is so disruptive because trauma doesn't say, hey, excuse me, I'm going to like totally blow up your pillars, your pillars of faith, your pillars of spiritual fathers and mothers, like just pillars are going to blow up.
Doesn't ask for permission.
It happens, and then you have to digest, you have to catch up, you have to, because that's the thing with PTSD, is it disrupts your life where you're flipped upside down and you don't know which way is up, you don't know which way is down.
So you're basically you're rebuilding from scratch in some senses.
Yeah, and I think that we're just tipping the iceberg of the gravity of PTSD and understanding that it's super relative, meaning that everyone that's going through PTSD, it's going to look differently for them. There's going to be different manifestations. There's going to be different things their body is doing to communicate, hey, I am in PTSD. And so, but I think that we're starting to understand and have a lot more empathy of what's going on with PTSD. I think taking that journey of understanding, okay, like I'm going to build a deeper place. Well, going back to the kids, having kids, if you study psychology, normally if you get married or you're firstborn, or might be your secondborn, it will trigger trauma that happened in your childhood. It's an invitation, like in your soul, because in our inherent nature as human beings, we want to give our kids, our offspring, the leg up. We want to give them an inheritance. We want to help them. Right. And if you look at like family lines, usually what the generation before dealt with in their upbringing, like they're going to have their kids have a little bit better of an upbringing. Yeah. And so what happens is a lot of people will have things that they have been submerged in their subconscious, also like sexual abuse, emotional abuse, whatever it may be, and they have a kid, your soul will start triggering, and you'll start crying at certain times or start whatever it may be, and so I'd understand that you don't, because a lot of people, when you go through trauma and when you're Forrest Gumping, you're white knuckling it when it's first happening, the first couple months, you don't know that it's happening. So like meaning that you are just becoming aware of what's going on. And so like for example, when I was going through trauma in 2014, and that's when anxiety came into my life for the first time, like 34 years old, never dealt with anxiety. I was having night sweats. I lost a bunch of weight. I would mess with people. They would say, Chad, you look like you're losing so much weight. What's your secret? And I'm like, oh, road biking and anxiety. Those are the perfect combos, like. And so you have to, I started losing a little bit of my appetite, all that stuff, where you have to understand those are all indicators. My digestive system, like all that stuff. I mean, we're discovering with the gut being the second brain, all this different stuff, and about like, there's people that eat their emotions, they're coping. So understanding when you're going through trauma, you're going to want to cope, you're going to want to escape. And that's the big thing is when you don't know what's happening, I'll go into this whole thing. As I started really realizing, like, man, why am I so short? Why am I so, like the things I had patience for, this is when I first started dealing with anxiety. And I went to Danny Silk and I'm like, Danny, it feels like my capacity is way lower. And he's like, oh, that means your silo is full. Your ability to take any more crap, like you can't take any more. What you had capacity for, before the season, you can't expect. And that's where people they're hard on themselves. They're like, why can't I be, I'm always nice to this person. Why am I? And they're condemning and like, oh, you totally went off on that person, when they should be asking, oh, what is going on internally? What's going on that would cause, what's the root that's trying to be exposed? Because I'm not normally angry at that person.
Right.
And that you're not,
why is the silo
and you will get
full?
lost in the weeds if you get on yourself and you don't have compassion for yourself, where you could take the journey of, why am I so angry? Why am I being triggered? Why am I? And then you start, getting through that, and that's a blast. If you could answer that, you will save a lot of time and a lot of money on counseling if you could get to the root problems. But you have to enjoy the journey. Sorry, we're going to jump into this whole thing.
Let me hold you on for one sec. So you've been in ministry for
18 years.
18 years, and you hit this wall, or your silo's full. And again, as Christians, a lot of the time in the church, talking about high levels of anxiety and process as a high-level pastor, minister, that is basically unacceptable.
Totally.
You know what I mean? So, and part of my story as well, going through BSSM, I was saved in 2008, had a couple years in Canada, then came to BSSM, and my first 4 years in Redding, all through BSSM, high levels of anxiety. I'm on meds, depressed, beating myself up daily, comparing myself, and walking this trust journey out with the Lord of releasing control of my emotions and learning how to love myself through whatever I'm going through, let God love me through whatever, let community love me through whatever. But my question for you is, why do we have such a shame complex surrounding that type of process? And then how did you do it? What was that like for you?
I think that we go into the holiness movement, which birthed Azusa Street and Assemblies of God, and you got Foursquare and all that stuff. So you have this man of God deal, right? So you put the minister on a pedestal.
Did you eat French onion bites? Did you?
Yes. Tell people about Patreon, honey.
I'm chewing.
Well, they're waiting, honey.
It's a carrot. Give me a break.
Go ahead.
If you like the podcast, you can donate $1 a month on Patreon to help support the podcast. I said the podcast too many times tonight.
It's fine.
Also, eat your vegetables. And this dip. I'd like to probably do it again.
And that comes back to compartmentalization.
Oh, yes. Compartmentalization, but also setting people up for failure.
Yes.
That you have put a standard, so they can't be. You find these things, these systems that cause. It's intriguing when you look at structure and systems that kill creativity, vulnerability. Vulnerability is huge. And I think God really wants to disrupt in the church and bring another level of vulnerability. Because if I'm vulnerable about, I'm struggling in this area, I am going through anxiety, I'm going through, people will tend in ministry to put you on timeout. So if you're dealing with, something's going on in your marriage, something's going on, and you're in a working environment, they're going to say, okay, hey, how can we help you? We've got outsourcing counselors that we'll pay for. We've got, the church will do in-house counseling, which is not a smart move. For the majority of stuff, if you're dealing with, blowing up, you probably want, in any other business, you would be outsourced, to be where we do it in-house, which can cause, there's just a lot of, there is not just shame, but there's this timeout deal that we need to break off.
Can you describe, I'm asking questions inside of questions, but what you just said about outsourcing counseling in ministry, that just blew my mind. That would have saved me probably a lot of pain. Yeah. Seriously.
No, I know, I understand that. I deal with the same, I've dealt with the same stuff.
2 minutes on that.
Well, I think there's a number of factors or a number of dimensions why I would bring that up to say that that's not a wise deal, in the sense, if you're in a working environment and you're maybe having issues come up with your personal life, but then it's hitting your, work life, you're not going to be vulnerable with a person that can, potentially report to their boss, or your boss. That just doesn't, you see that in the business realm, they never do that because they know that's, I can't get the right words of what I would want, how do I want to articulate this, but it's not inbreeding. It would be but it would be very something similar, in the sense of it's not, that wouldn't be the right word to articulate this, but there is
perceived weakness or,
Well, you're not, it's also, I think one of the things, here's another reason, is the church has been famously known as the majority of a mom and pop. We try to do all, one size fits all. Where there are people that are specializing in trauma, and we say, oh no, go see this pastor who does not specialize in trauma. They have great intentions and they might have some good skill set, but there's not a lot of Danny Silks or Yvonne Martinez, that works in the Sozo, in the Transformation Center, that are qualified, where we in the church would be like, okay, hey, meet with this person. They're not qualified. Where we would do that person such a better service is if they went to somebody that was qualified, and they would be outside the church. But I think there needs to be a safe place of vulnerability to begin to get traction, because when you are dealing with trauma, the first thing the enemy loves to do is isolate us. Yes. So that's what you're going to find a lot. People that are committing suicide, all stuff, that they probably were spending a lot of time alone. Yes. They were isolating. And so the deal is we have this not just in the church, but in the world of, if I'm contemplating suicide or all this stuff, then there's going to be, it's so presented as weakness, as, but we shame vulnerability when we should be championing it, saying that is a place of strength. To say I need help is actually a place of strength. I mean, I think hitting the whole biblical side to this is that I think we have a lot of people that are in the whole, where David was in Ziklag and he came back with his mighty men on a war campaign, and found out their wives and children were kidnapped, their houses were burning, their cattle and all their possessions stolen. And 1/3 of his mighty men, 200 out of the 600 said, we can't go on, we are tapped out. And they rested by the river, where 400 of them went back into the enemy's territory and got what the enemy has stolen. And they said, why are we going to give to these guys? These guys just rested by the river. And David made it a law, made it a decree, that everyone gets back what the enemy has stolen. And I think that a lot of people, especially coming from the baby boomers into our generation of millennials, I think we're doing a way better job of this, or we've hit this more on the forefront in our early life, in our early careers and professional careers, of saying, you know what, I think I need to rest by the river. But I think that we're on this journey of what is community, and understanding one of the dynamics of community is they will fight for me when I can't fight. I need to go and rest by the river, because when you have somebody that can't rest by the river, and I'm going to go do it. I don't call in. I crawl in. I'm going to keep on hitting. Where you have that tenacity, you have that resiliency. That's amazing stuff from that generation, and grabbing. But the problem is a lot of them didn't know that they could rest by the river. That they would have saved, a lot of emotional equity, all that stuff, if they would have been vulnerable and to their community and saying, hey, we're going through a hard time in our marriage. We're going through a hard time in this or that, or I'm dealing with childhood stuff, and I need to rest by the river. Will you fight for my breakthrough? And I think we're learning how to do that. And I think the church is learning how to build a structure system for that to happen.
Yes.
But yeah, Jesus.
Nailed it. So, yeah, man. That whole journey through, let's touch on nutrition for a little bit, because, and I mean, this is a whole nother 3-hour podcast, but was that a significant part of your recovery as well?
Yeah, I think that has always.
You've been learning a lot about it.
Yeah, my wife and I have Forrest Gumped our way through the whole nutrition, and I've gotten involved in supplements and all this stuff, and then I'm like realizing, oh, my grandparents in Reno, Nevada had a health food store for 40 years. I'm like, this is like my heritage, just like, and that's another big thing that we need to hit on is that God gives us arrows, especially in our childhood, that we maybe didn't pick up, that when we go through trauma as we get later on in life, that we discover and rediscover those arrows that we maybe didn't steward, we didn't pick up, that were given to us in our childhood, that's in our inheritance. I mean, let's just go down. Can we go down this lane for a second? And then we'll hit nutrition.
Please.
So I was in my car accident, almost died, October. In January, I'm spending time with the Lord. And I'm in the prayer chapel, and the Lord says to me, Chad, I want to encounter you. And I'm like, yeah, it's kind of like why I'm here. Like, yeah, encounter me. Like, let's do this. And he goes, no, I don't want to talk to 36-year-old Chad. I want to talk to 6-year-old Chad. Wow. And so I became a 6-year-old boy. And then there's the Holy Spirit. And the Holy Spirit leads me to what looks like the floor of Yosemite. Okay. And I see this big waterfall, but then I see this art easel. Okay. And this art easel there, and the Holy Spirit says it's time to paint again. And I get triggered of when I was 6 years old, and I went on a gallery tour, this art gallery tour with my grandma. My mom's mom was a professional artist. Okay. She was watercolor. She was a sculptor. She was amazing. So I did this gallery tour with her in Bend, Oregon, in Ashland, and like Laguna Beach, and we just went down.
When you were 6, and your mom is also a professional artist.
Yeah, my mom's an amazing artist. So there was a lot of pressure. Like when I deal with pressure, being a pastor's kid, all this stuff, I am like Mr. Freedom. So how I respond an unhealthy way is I rebel. Yeah. So I mean, the opposite of rebellion is freedom. That would be like the unhealthy side of my coin. That if I'm in an unhealthy spot, I rebel. But if I'm in a healthy spot, I walk in freedom, meaning that control never controls me. Yes. That I've learned how to be free in the midst of a prison. Yep. And that's like one of the places that we're all called to live in, is that it doesn't matter about our circumstances. It doesn't matter. It could be put in a physical jail cell and I could still be free. Yes. And so anyways, I felt a lot of pressure to do art, and I think I began to rebel as a kid because of all this pressure. Because I mean, my grandma was professional, my mom was this amazing artist and professional. And so, and I think I had a couple art teachers growing up that had some criticism to the point that I began to self-sabotage. When I was in high school, I took ceramics and I flunked. You have to have an element of self-sabotage to flunk high school ceramics. So I began to believe this narrative of I'm not creative this way, that I'm creative in other ways. And I began to get traction and success and ministry and developing other skill sets and other places of creativity where but if you were to get me to a place of honesty and vulnerability, that was a giant that was taunting me. Dang, like I want to be an artist, but that I'm scared. That lie of I should have done this when I was a kid. Too much time has passed by. I don't want to learn this at 25. The comparison thing. I mean, there's a number of issues that were happening, but it wasn't like. I didn't get inundated. I had a lot of other great things. I had, great self-esteem, all that stuff. And I was just like in another lifetime type of thought deal. Yeah. But then I had this car accident, and then the Holy Spirit says, it's time for you to do art again. You see it's time to paint. Yeah. So I enroll myself in a painting class at the local college. I start going to my mom's workshops, and it's crazy the first 20 minutes. The first 20 minutes of doing art for the first probably few months that I did it, you were dealing with so much comparison, you're dealing with so much inadequacy, and it's so crazy because I wrote a book called The Risk Factor, and taking risks spiritually, taking risk in evangelism, all that stuff where I feel like it's not scary to me to jump on a parked car and preach the gospel at a movie theater parking lot or something like that. Right. But to do art was freaking me out, Yes. And I think that's the deal is Sometimes the things that freak you out the most are the things that you have like the most authority, or you connect with God, or you discover a point of wholeness.
Breakthrough is often on the other
So
side.
20 minutes of doing art, I get lost in art. And that's the deal, is I know like, okay, it's gonna be 20 minutes. It's gonna be 20 minutes of white knuckling, breaking this like second heaven or soul or my thoughts. And then I suddenly enter in where I get lost. Whoa. And I will get in there for 2 hours and I will come out and I'll be like, a part of me is more whole than when I started. There was healing, and then I started finding out with PTSD that art is one of the ways actually to kill PTSD. Like Stanford did a study about art and how it's bypassing logically parts of your brain to cause synapses to start firing, to cause new neurotransmitters to hit in there, so that
you're rewiring your
brain.
You're
rewiring your brain, but to understand rewiring and to understand about this whole thing with neurotransmitters and all stuff, one of the fruits of that is it restarts, but it gives you a head start. That's the more way I would approach it. Like you got to find arrows, find different things that get you out of trauma, that get you out of that quicksand, that get you out of like spiraling, and they give you a head start. Like, you know, I found that out with float tanks. I found that out with like CBD. I found that out with, nutrition. I found that out with sleep. I mean, like all these different arrows are, because I did a lot of counseling. I did EDMR. I went and saw a psychologist that works with Navy SEALs coming back from tours of duty, and she would assess if they got PTSD, and she's like, tell me about what's going on with you. And I did, and she's like, you have severe PTSD. And I'm like, all right, sweet, let's kill this thing.
Yeah.
And it was a journey, and I think I hit this earlier, is you have to embrace the journey. So many people coming out of trauma, you will take 2 steps and 1 step back, and you and the enemy will try to get you to focus on that 1 step back. But you have to do the math and say, well, 2 steps forward, 1 step back means 1 step still forward. I'm still taking ground. So like, not despising the day of small beginnings, but understanding, because when you're in trauma, it can feel like that you're grabbing branches in your quicksand, and the more movement you make, the deeper you go. But the deal is you have to do some movement to get out.
Yes.
Just sitting there and going, oh no, if I move, I'm gonna go deeper,
Right.
and then you're gonna eventually
Gravity's gonna
yeah. So you've gotta grab for branches.
Wow.
But don't be discouraged if you get deeper in the quicksand. Focus on what you're grabbing, not how you're going further down. But I think that is a big one. So me hitting, like, I didn't realize that this was such a big arrow to my breakthrough to kill trauma that I had as an inheritance, but also I had as a child, that it was one of the places of like, bummer. I wish I could have stewarded that as, there was a lot of regret attached to it. Now I'm out of regret. And that's the deal of being present is so big of, breaking that compartmentalization. If you can be present, if you can be aware, of your spirit, soul, and body, and be present, which means being present is you are connected to yesterday, and you're connected to tomorrow. But it's through, you're never looking at yesterday through regret. You're looking at yesterday. God doesn't waste 1 day in our journey. Meaning we could think, I did those drugs, or I rebelled, or, I was sleeping around, all this sort of stuff. If you look at David's life, if you look at Daniel's life, if you look at Joseph's life, God does not waste a day. Each, whether it be injustice or trauma, whatever, is actually ammunition, arrow to have authority to destroy the enemy and to bring other people into breakthrough and wholeness. And so understanding that I could look at being connected to my past, seeing that through the blood of Jesus, and seeing through the redemptive of Romans 8:28, that what the enemy meant for evil and harm, God is going to use for good. And so it's exciting.
Wow.
PTSD, I've seen so many people getting really set free of trauma. And one of the big building blocks of that has been peace. Is a big one. But we should hit nutrition before we get into this peace deal.
Well, there's so much.
The nutrition deal, the gut health is so important, because if you understand, it feels like there's so many different ways of becoming aware of trauma and all this stuff, but understanding your gut health is what is it, 80% of diseases come from an unhealthy gut?
Something like that.
It's something in that, like, 80 to 90%. I mean, it's ridiculous.
Yep.
How many people could clean up their gut will take care of so many issues going on in their body.
Yep.
But also, it's just, you have to be aware of your body not maxing it out. Like if your cortisol levels are jacked and you got inflammation in your gut, like it's gonna cause this compounding flare up. And so Julie and I, we've done like master cleanses, we've done all kinds of liver cleanses, detox, we will juice, we'll do a number of different things to clean our guts. My wife, she had a cyst on her thyroid that led her down this real, journey. And I was 2013. And so we've done like the bone broth diet for like 2 months where we're just having bone broth. I'll never forget like jumping into that whole thing. Like we did a week of just bone broth, breakfast, lunch, and dinner. And she's like, guess what, honey? Like next week we get a raw egg in this. And I'm like, you gotta be kidding me, a raw egg? and then after like 3 weeks, we got yogurt with honey, which totally changed my palate. I love yogurt and honey. And it was from doing, because when you do detox and stuff like that, you are re-educating, you're recalibrating your palate.
Yes.
So you're getting rid of all of the junk, but now you're not going to have, your body will crave
the right thing.
Your body will crave nutrients and all that stuff where you will now get sick with Jack in the Box. You'll get sick with enzymes that you were not supposed to be digesting.
Totally.
But you get the good, bacteria in you and you start knowing.
Yes.
And I mean, I think that is and I think we have to recognize the ways that we detox. Obviously, if you are detoxing right, you're going to have great bowel movements. But if you're detoxing emotionally, the way that you detox is through your eye gate, is through your eyes. So you're detoxing emotions. You're actually getting healed of emotions when you are crying at random times or crying when you begin to face that trauma.
Whoa.
That is a form of detox.
Whoa, really?
Yeah. So you cannot have shame or like, man, why am I crying so much? Don't say, why am I crying? Like, say, why am I crying? Where you go deeper. You don't get on yourself, man, I'm just like an emotional whatever, there is something going on. You're detoxing.
Wow.
Some trauma. So anyways, nutrition stuff is huge. And then I think sleep is a big deal. But we could get into sleep in a second if you...
Something specifically with gut health. I've been doing my own kefir. Have you heard of kefir?
Oh yeah, definitely.
And I'm all about it, man. So specifically with probiotics, one of the things I've been learning is that it's a numbers game because the stomach is a highly volatile environment. Like it's actually really challenging for probiotic material to actually pass through the gut. And so buying super expensive bottled yogurt probiotic type deals is great. Like keep doing that. But I've heard, I'm trying to remember her name, amazing doctor, super practical out of England. And she talks about how to actually pass the gut lining and get that probiotic material in, you need to be doing, it's about numbers. It's about, you gotta like do a lot. And the cheapest and easiest way to do that is through doing your own kefir. So online, I mean, and a lot of people just do it for free, that you get these kefir grains and it's like this, almost like curds. It looks kind of weird and it smells kind of like yeast. But you just put it in milk for a day in room temperature, a couple days, and it creates this kind of sour, it's not rotten, but it's like a yogurty, like a strong yogurty liquid thing. And I just do like a couple times, 3 times throughout the day, shots of this thing with my meals, and my energy levels have improved, my sleep has improved. I've noticed my palate has changed a little bit. And I just like buy raw milk from the store or from we have a friend that does raw dairy as well. And I would recommend that definitely before. Some people are lactose intolerant, but the thing with the kefir grains is the kefir actually eats all the lactose in the milk. So oftentimes if you're lactose intolerant, don't take my word for it, I'm not a doctor, but there's very little lactose. which that's the kind of the thing that people can have issues with.
And my wife and I have done kefir quite a bit, drank a lot of kefir. Then we'll do ginger shots in the morning. We'll do turmeric shots.
Yes.
We'll do a bunch of different, we drink a lot of celery.
Yeah, celery juice.
Which is like understanding the whole like acidic and alkalining your body and like, so we've done a lot. I mean, we could go into water, like in the sense of just understanding how most people have water systems that they're trying to go after clean water, but their water systems are really, really bad.
Yes.
We're talking about mold, we're talking about all kinds of different stuff, or you're not alkalining your body, you know, your pH levels in the water might be all jacked around. So I mean, I think that we're becoming way more aware, way more educated, and coming out of like, there's just a lot of disruption happening. There was a lot of like kind of us as Americans just kind of did because it's the culture, the momentum, the convenience, you know, and food has just been an intriguing deal of the wizard kind of being, you know, the curtain has come up, you know, like. And I think that we're on such a journey of finding that kind of radical middle, because I have so many friends that are vegan, so many friends, and you're like going back and forth, and it's just an intriguing deal. But I think that going on a journey of making sure that my gut is well, and I mean, I'm pretty lucky in that way. I do a pretty good job. And my wife, I've kind of done a lot more stuff because of Jules and her journey. So I'm like kind of just with her, like, hey, I'm here to support you. But then I get to discover so much in that process.
Absolutely.
But sleep, I think, you know, what you eat, and you know, I would eat a lot of like tomatoes and stuff, and that'd be really acidic. So I would have to like wake up in the middle of the night, like burping, you know, all that stuff. And so I'm like, okay, so I've been able to monitor, like, okay, I'm not going to eat this for dinner.
How do you protect your sleep? That's something I've really gone after, is like, if there's like top 3 things for me to like protect, it's probably like sleep, water, and then like lots of leafy greens. Yeah. Maybe something like that.
I think we're just starting to understand sleep. I mean, especially with people that work at night. They say that nurses and doctors lose about 4 to 5 years of their life.
And they're like something like predisposed 50 to 60.
So if you don't sleep for 18 hours, you are legally drunk. You have the same your body chemistry is equivalent to being drunk with a 0.08 alcohol content. So your vision is a little bit impaired, your decision making is inhibited, like, you know, all that stuff. And they did a whole study at Harvard Medical where they had I think it was around 200 doctors that did a 30-hour shift, and then another, you know, 200 doctors that did 10-hour shifts where they were able to sleep and all that stuff. And that the doctors that did a 30-hour shift had like 48% more errors and like critical errors. You know, so we're talking about like taking care of our bodies. But if we want to get into this place, which is really good, of the medical world, is we do such a good job in America for injuries, trauma, but we do not do a great job of preventive. Like you were talking about anxiety and being prescribed medicine. I remember going through a miscarriage, and it was the closest to in my life that I almost lost my mind. When I found out I was having a miscarriage, I was on a speaking engagement. I was in the green room on FaceTime with my wife in the hospital, and the doctor confirms this is a miscarriage. And I'm about ready to speak to like 800 people. And I just lost my son, and I lost it. Like, I had one minister that said, you need to get angry with God. So I got angry with God. Like, I went to the beach, and when I got angry with God, I actually felt like I was on the tip of losing my mind. So what that looked like, I was laughing uncontrollably and crying uncontrollably, but I couldn't stop, and I was doing both. And we went to the airport, and they weren't going to let me fly. And I said, listen, I'm so happy that I was able to articulate where I was at. But I said, I just found out that my wife had a miscarriage. I'm on a business trip. I've got to get home to my 3-year-old daughter and to my wife. And so they put me in a wheelchair and let me fly. But like, my wife, my family was like, hey, maybe you need to get on some kind of medication. And I'm like, well, I think I'm grieving, like David would have been given Prozac very easily when, he tore off his clothes, was wailing at night, give you some SR1. So they gave me Prozac and I studied it and I was like, oh my gosh, like we've only been known about this medication for 20 some years. We don't know about the longevity and all the research is coming out about Alzheimer's and how like you're way more susceptible to have Alzheimer's if you are taking certain, a lot of different medications. That what's going on with that SR1 is it's a disruptor where you are stuck in firing your neurotransmitter and getting dopamine to come naturally or serotonin naturally. Yeah. It's a jump starter. It's like gives you that kick. Right. But the problem is 20% because you have to take it for a year and a half because they got to like go. The first couple months they're trying to figure out the dosage or maybe get you on something different. Then you've got to take it for a year and then you've got to wean yourself off. So you usually are in a year and a half, 2 years taking this medication. They say if you take 20% of those that take an SR1, their neurotransmitters now will become dependent on that SR1 for the rest of their life. That now their neurotransmitters cannot fire naturally. Mm-hmm. They need that SR1
on that external
20%, which is worse than Russian roulette, which is 1 out of 6. This is 1 out of 5. I know people that have tried to get off their SR1 and they can't. So, in Canada, they're starting to prescribe people that are dealing with mental health, dealing with, that, hey, we're going to prescribe to you an hour outside and getting a gym membership. And so understanding the importance of physical activity, recreation is recreation, understanding how to develop structure and a discipline to have dopamine. What are the different ways that I could get dopamine and serotonin to flow naturally in my body before I ever try to get inhibitors to correct it, and I think 100%, I think that's one of the big things that we're having is there's a disruption in the medical pharmaceutical world.
Where it's not enough just to throw meds at a problem.
Yeah.
It has to be, and that can help, I think, in the short term and in certain circumstances, definitely. There's definitely circumstances.
Yeah, there needs to be breaking off of shame people that are taking SR1s because there's a lot of shame. There's a lot of oh, what's wrong? Oh, you must be really bad. You must be, and that's you have to watch everything that, this is what's been going on with generations. This is going on in that whole unity thing. You have to watch any comments that creates distance between you and somebody else. Yes. You must be really depressed if you're taking an SR1 or where you now are creating distance, where you have removed an opportunity for empathy, for understanding. And one of the ways to grow in empathy and understanding is to become curious. That you become intrigued, you become curious to their journey, you begin to ask them questions about how did they get there, what are the things that you can't overcome now, where you just become curious. And then that will allow empathy to grow and understanding. And there needs to be a breaking off of shame. But I think there's also an education where, and an awareness that we are over prescribing. So to give you an idea, this is a stat that's pretty shocking, is America is 4% of the world's population and we consume 80% of the world's medications.
That's staggering.
Yes. That is crazy that we consume 80% of the world's medications. Yeah. So, this is way bigger than SR1s. benzos, opioid crisis. When I broke my clavicle, they gave me Oxycontin. I didn't realize that was heroin. And I, after taking one script of it, I was like, hey, doctor, you've got to give me something like some Vicodin, something that's way lower. I feel like I'm a prisoner of my own mind. He's like, no, you had an invasive surgery. You have metal, you've got screws, you're healing from the broken, clavicle bone. You need this. And after 3 go-arounds, I finally got him to confess, or not confess, but I got him to say, he makes $150 per script. And I was like, I'm going to go see another doctor. And there's just so many people that are being over prescribed when there could be other ways, other alternative ways that because it's just what medication does, like we're talking about with gut health. A real problem with a lot of people with their gut is because of the medications they're taking. It's destroying their liver, their kidneys.
So much of that stuff is like a nuclear bomb for your gut, and it just destroys everything. I mean, did you know we're actually, cell-wise, we're actually more percentage-wise bacteria than we are anything else?
Yeah.
Like our whole body is this conglomerate of like water and bacteria, and the like good healthy bacteria. And then when you get an infection or a virus, you're prescribed, what is it called? Can't remember. You're prescribed meds that literally nuclear bomb all of
all your
bacteria,
good, all your good bacteria and all the bad.
And now you have no energy, you can't sleep, and
you're very susceptible to disease, to all kinds of different stuff.
It's a gnarly
it is,
thing.
and it compounds. And the whole thing with sleep, is a big one that you said that you protect, and that's a big one that I've discovered is sleep deprivation. 70% of Americans are sleep deprived. And I think one of my big things of killing PTSD is understanding peace and connecting to peace. And it was really probably a 6-month journey of me meditating on peace. What does peace look like? And who does the Prince of Peace look like? And I began to just meditate on understanding one of the connection points of peace is rest. And one of the ways that you are going to be rested is knowing how to sleep. And so I began to go on this journey of understanding sleep, growing in my sleep, because it compounds. Like you can't sleep 4 hours and then the next day sleep 12 hours and you catch up. Like it takes, weeks, sometimes months to come out of sleep deprivation. And so understanding REM, there's a lot to jump in, but peace, sleep is just one manifestation of peace where I began to grow in this place of peace. And the thing is when you're on a journey of breaking trauma, there is a lot of inward stuff you do. Counseling, doing art, like that's all like inward, you're focused on yourself. And I think that in order to do unto others as you would have them do to you, you have to grow in your empathy and compassion. One of the hardest people to forgive at times is yourself. Like I fell asleep at the wheel. I had to forgive myself that I put my life at jeopardy where my kids might not have had their natural father growing up. So I had to forgive myself. I had to go on a journey of forgiving myself. And a lot of people get hung up on this area. They can forgive others, but they cannot forgive themselves. But one of the things that I found, I'll just package this with this story, and then we'll wrap up. Okay. But so I did Catch the Wave, where I rented out Calvary Chapel, which was like redigging the Jesus People movement deal down in Orange County, Heidi Baker, and then I was in my car accident in October, and then we fast forward to December 2018, and this woman contacts my wife, who's a realtor, and says, I want to buy some property in Redding. And she says, I was at your event. She meets with the both of us. I was at your Catch the Wave event in Orange County. And I heard God say when you were up on the stage, this guy will take your husband surfing. What happened, her husband was a big surfer, mountain biker. He was riding his bike on Super Bowl Sunday, which we're like the day before the Super Bowl right now. But anyways, Super Bowl Sunday, this would have been 3 years ago. He was riding his bike and was hit by a drunk driver. It was 4 o'clock in the afternoon. He was in the bike lane. This guy in a truck was drunk coming from Super Bowl halftime or whatever, hit him. He didn't have a spine injury. It was a brain injury that caused his brain does not fire his body. So he is quadriplegic, but he's not quadriplegic. Because a quadriplegic is you severed parts of your spine. Okay. It's a brain. His brain does not fire. So he does not talk. All he could do was blink. So he can't move. He could sometimes move some fingers, or sometimes he has involuntary move because it's not a spine thing. He could still move, but his brain does not fire to his parts of his body. Whoa. And so he's dealing with this, and she says, but
he's still cognitive.
He's still cognitive.
Communicate through blinking.
It takes a while. Yeah. She's the primary caretaker, so she's with him all the time. So she's able to see how he communicates. But yes, he is. He's cognitive. And so she says, the Lord told me you're going to take him surfing. Now, I just had a crazy brain injury. I had a concussion. I had a really bad head injury. Yeah. I'm foggy. I'm all this stuff. She's telling me, and I'm like seeing pictures of him. that he's in this crazy wheelchair, and in this whole thing of do unto others as you would have them do to you. Like if I could have been in this guy's situation, I could have hit my head, very easily, what I would have been, and who would take me surfing? Because I know if I am in that spot, I would want, like if I'm still breathing, I'm still conscious, I can't move, somebody hopefully takes me out surfing, straps me, seatbelts me into a surfboard, and they get me out in that water. You know what I mean? Like I'm not dead yet. And so do unto others as you would have them do to you. I'm like, I've got to take this guy out surfing. But I turn to him, I'm like, hey, I need to heal. I need to recover. When I get better, I will take him.
Yeah.
So and
they live in SoCal.
They live in SoCal. Yeah. So I go through this whole journey of like doing art, doing, learning the guitar, doing like EDMR, like all these different arrows of killing PTSD, killing trauma. And then we do like a kids surf lesson, and that's like amazing. Taking out kids with special needs, we took out this one kid, Anthony, who was blind. That was pretty amazing. And I was like, I got to take this guy out. So in August, I took him out surfing, and it was and we got 3 waves. It was incredible. I have like video footage. It was amazing. But they were leaving, we accomplished it. It was amazing. They leave, and it hits me in December of the conversation, I will take him when I am better. I suddenly have this moment where I go to the ground and I'm crying going, I guess I'm better. And there's something about contending for other people's breakthrough. Like if you're dealing with trauma or you're needing breakthrough in something, I mean, I've seen this with healing, people that have back issues and why hasn't God healed me? And I'm like, well, when's the last time you prayed for someone else's back issue? And then the big test is when that other person gets healed of their back issue, will you celebrate or will you get more mad at God? Yes. Well, you healed them and not me. Yes. And it's that ability to contend for other people's breakthrough, understanding that your breakthrough is wrapped around their breakthrough. Like, can you rejoice and just go, and so there was this place of like, I guess I'm better, And so, it was a big one. Yeah, God wants to get people out of trauma, out of PTSD, but to enjoy the journey, to enjoy the process, that there is an invitation for wholeness, an invitation for an upgrade, that it's an education on wish upon no one, but I feel like my empathy levels have gone up like crazy. Dude. And then my capacity for peace, understanding like there's such a pillar of peace that I have in my life.
Okay, real quick, before I let you go, resources. You've written some stuff. You have some stuff available online. Could you touch on that? How can people jump in to catch the wave? And then even stuff on PTSD. What's some of the things that have really helped you?
I think reading Brené Brown is huge, which I think a lot of people are starting to read.
Yeah.
But I mean,
changed my life for sure.
Yeah, and then, The Body Keeps the Score is a big one. And then I wrote a book called The Risk Factor, which is a really, really needed tool to take risks. I really have given my life to that, of a lifestyle of taking risk in various ways, and EncounteringJesus.com, that's our website, and then you'll find out a lot about Catch the Wave. We're going to be doing Catch the Waves in California. We'll be doing Catch the Waves in New Zealand and Australia. So come join us. We're going to do these things called Catch the Wave experiences where we'll be camping, and there won't be a conference type of setting where it's 9 to noon and 2 to 4. It's like we're eating together, we're running together, we're doing stuff outdoors. We're not like just sitting down. Like we're gonna
camping on the beach.
Yeah, camping on the beach, which would be awesome.
There's nothing better.
But come with us.
Come on, man.
Yeah,
Chad, love you, man. Thank
you
so much.
Love you guys.
It's awesome.
All right, dude, we gotta roll out. I gotta roll out.
Yeah.
Right now,